Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the Venn Pod. We are so happy you could listen with us today. My name is Hannah, and beside me is my duo partner, podcast partner extraordinaire, Alex. And today we are doing some good old Q&A. Yay! So we asked you what you wanted to know about us, and we said that it didn't have to be clarinet specific. Like I said that Alex and I have some really good rom-com recs. Like the second a new rom-com drops, Alex and I are like texting about it. So, but apparently nobody else wants to know about the rom-com recs because you all asked some really good questions about like music stuff too. So we'll jump right in with our questions, and we'll share our points of view, and hopefully they're interesting and helpful to you, to those of you that asked and to those of you that didn't. Okay, so here we go. Let's jump right in with our Instagram question. So Emily Rose Clarinet asks, what have you done to work past the intimidation slash fear of meeting new noodleists? I love you all. Noodleists, I think that is so funny. I think she means like other woodwind players or other clarinet people. I'm going to start using that, noodleist. So what have you done to work past that imitation slash fear?
It's actually funny. I feel like I have this external persona that when it comes to meeting people, she's just, hi, introducing yourself type of thing. But like on a normal basis, I'm pretty like to myself. I have social skills, I would say, but what have I done? Honestly, it's just kind of like putting yourself out there. It's like having that persona that when you're in a situation where you know it's in your best interest to communicate with people, get to know each other, socialize with others, like just let her rip, like let her loose. And that's what honestly I do. Cause once I'm not in that setting, Hannah knows this. I'm like in my corner hiding. In undergrad, I would hide from Hannah. I would hide from Hannah. Like she couldn't even find me sometimes because I just need time to myself. But when it comes time to be in like rehearsals or at like ICA, like my external persona is there. What have you done though?
Now, I was just going to say that you are really good at that. So, like, whenever we go to like ICA stuff, like as a duo, we pretty much like bop around together because like we have a pretty, like, we have a rehearsal schedule. So we pretty much just stick together all day. And I am also an introvert. Um, and I consider myself to be, I'm a music teacher, I'm a teacher, and I consider myself like pretty good at being able to like, turn on my extroverted side when I need to. But Alex in particular is really good at just like turning on that professional persona. And honestly, I think she's just had practice at it. Is that true, Alex? Like as a business major, like as well as a music major, like you had to have a lot of practice, like just being in that professional, operating on that professional level and stuff. And so I don't know, like Alex was saying, I think you just have to like full send or no send, just like put it out there. I mean, whenever I always really appreciate when I have a professional interaction at somewhere like ICA and I feel really comfortable, right? Like I can go up to somebody and I talk with them and I'm like, wow, that was like really comfortable. Like I learned something about them. They made me feel like welcome. They were super friendly. And so whenever I'm having those conversations or whenever I'm in like a professional setting where I'm meeting new people, I just try and do the same thing. Like I try and put people at ease. Like I try and be friendly and warm and inviting. And obviously still maintaining that like professional, code of decorum that we all tried to keep. But I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of safety in the clarinet community. Like at least the people that Alex and I have met at ICA, they've been like super warm and super kind. And I feel like if you are struggling with like intense fear of meeting other musicians, like just like evaluate your own mindset because a lot of people like they're not like out to get you, like, and I feel like that can be the perception, especially if you're like going into like a new program or a new place. Like you might feel like everybody is like, you might feel like, the fresh meat in the lion's den or something. But generally, I would say that musicians are really kind. The music world is really small. And so we all just tend to be pretty inviting. So if you're feeling anxious, just know that everybody is probably experiencing some level of anxiety about, talking to somebody new for the first time, and just like be friendly and warm and inviting and make a positive connection. That's really all you could do. You don't have to worry about, making the best impression ever the very first time you meet somebody.
Yeah. And I mean, you make a valid point. I mean, it's funny because, okay, so we got to get a little background because when I grew up, and I joke with my mom about this, like I brought it up one time, like when I was a young girl, like 5, 6, and lower, I had like, I don't know what it's called, but I came across something called like mutism, where like I refused to speak to people. Like as much as I wanted to respond to someone, I just no words would come out. And like I was in the equivalent of like Girl Scouts for you all, but we call them like sunflowers and brownies. But it was funny because like they were like, "What's wrong with her?" Like, "Alex, come here, like whisper in my ear and tell me something." But like now, like if I'm in a public setting, especially a business or work setting, like Alex will speak. Professional Alex is there. But it's so interesting because I don't even think my degree has made me so open, because in the background, like I'm very quiet. Like you won't see me like just talking for fun. Like I don't do that. But in a public setting, yes, I'm there. And I think it's honestly a situation where when you're forced to speak so much, like it just happens. Like taking oral communications in undergrad, like you have to talk. And then if you have internships, you have to talk. A lot of my jobs, actually, even though I am so quiet, like in my personal space, have been a lot of communication jobs. Like I worked at a call center, I worked in the front of a bank, like with the tellers, I worked in customer service. So like, I don't know, something that I thought about when Hannah was talking about is like, if you're scared to talk amongst your peers, like the clarinetist, the best place to start is like, if you're in college, start talking to the service at the cafeteria. Like, I don't know why, but like just generating conversations, small conversations will start preparing you for bigger conversations in a more uncomfortable space. Like if you're comfortable being uncomfortable talking to like the workers in the cafeteria, like I think you'll be okay. But just start small, put yourself out there and it'll come.
Absolutely. Something else that I thought of too is something that I use all the time, and like even when I'm meeting like new friends for the first time, like or like new people that I'm going to be friends with, but is ask open-ended questions. So don't ask yes or no questions like do you like this, or like so ask it open-endedly. So if I was like meeting Alex for the first time and I said, "Hi Alex, did you go to Arizona State?" She could be like, "Yep." And then it's super weird. And then you're like, oh, I don't know what to do. But I could be like, oh, hi, Alex. It's nice to meet you. Tell me about where you're studying. And then that gives her the opportunity to walk me through, oh, I did my undergrad here. I'm doing my master's here with this person. And I'm doing my doctorate here, which happens to be the same place. And then I could say, well, what made you decide to stay? What are you learning from these people? So don't ask like black and white yes or no questions, because the more and more, like if you're anxious about talking, which sometimes I get anxious about talking about myself, so that's like a whole other like piece of the puzzle. But if you are feeling anxious about like, talking about yourself, then a really good way is to address that is to get the other person talking. So you can do that by asking open-ended questions. And while you're listening, which also, side note, make sure that you're listening well, right? Like don't like ask an open-ended question and then like space out or get distracted by the other 5 million things going on at ICA. Easier said than done, right? But ask that question and then latch on to something else that you want to ask them about. And if they're a good conversationalist, and chances are they will be, and they're a kind person, then they'll ask you something in return, and you can kind of, gauge how you should respond based on how they responded to.
Good stuff. I agree, because I feel like when people ask me open-ended questions, or if I ask an open-ended question, like me being the person I am, this is gonna sound so bad. If I ask you an open-ended question, like that's something to me who has had a lot of social interactions where I take it as, oh, you want this conversation to end, because there's only two answers, yes or no, right? So keep it going. Find things that connect. I have a follow-up question because someone asked this and I want to know the answer, because I know Hannah knows the answer, but I don't know the answer. So it's from one of my old studio mates because he graduated. Hank plays clarinet. He asked, how did you two meet and decide to form a duo? I know the second part, but the how did you meet? Don't know it.
Okay, so I remember, so Alex and I both went to Messiah University, which we shout out Messiah University all the time on this podcast.
I
They
know.
should be paying us, Alex. This is like
We're gonna
admission.
reach out. We're gonna reach out.
We'll be in touch with Messiah University, but that's where Alex and I did our undergrad. For those of you who don't know our story or our background or even what that is, but Messiah is like a very small Christian liberal arts college outside of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So kind of like the middle of the state. And both of us happened to decide to go there, and so we did our undergrad there. And I remember like seeing Alex at like our ensemble auditions, but like that's like a very nerve-wracking experience. And like I remember like seeing her and being like, oh, okay, that's Alex. She's like older. And I was like, okay, cool. Like we're probably gonna interact, but you know, we weren't like really friends. And so the first like conversation I remember having with Alex, and like the moment I was like, yeah, I think we're gonna be friends. Is like the band director, the wind ensemble director, pulled me aside. He was like, "Hey, are you ready for rehearsal today?" It was like our very first rehearsal. I was like, "I guess so." And then he was like, make sure you get with Alex Shea before rehearsal because the second clarinet part, which we were both playing, he was like, it's pretty hard. It's pretty exposed. So you guys need to go work that out." And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, I don't even know this Alex girl. I was like, what if she doesn't even want to like work with me on this? I was like, that's so scary. So it's like an hour before rehearsal. And I got my little backpack and I'm just like, well, I guess I gotta look for Alex. And so I'm like walking down the hall, like of the practice rooms. I'm like looking in rooms and all of a sudden I find Alex. I'm like, okay, I gotta shoot my shot. So I knock on the door. I'm like, hey, Kelowna said that we have to work on this before rehearsal. Is that okay? And she was like, yeah, I guess so. Come on in. And so then we started working on this part, and she was just like really nice to me and super encouraging. And that's kind of like I was like, oh, like she's nice, like she's cool, like we could maybe be friends, maybe kind of. And so that's like kind of when I knew that like she was like going to be a good friend of mine. And then we just like kept playing together all through our undergrad. Like we were pretty much stand partners the whole way through. And because we made a grouch whenever we weren't stand partners, we were like playing together. No, I'm kidding. But
Only
that's
like
kind
three of us too. No, four. Five at a
that's
time. Five at a time. That's the largest the studio was.
yeah, it was a pretty small school. So more often than not, Alex and I were sitting next to each other. And you know, Alex was really a good mentor to me because I was like still learning, especially in orchestra. Like I never played in an orchestra before, and I was just kind of like lost and overwhelmed by that. And she would be like, you're with the violins at this part, so you need to listen to them because you're not tuning with them. And she would just tell me stuff like that I was like, oh, I guess I never like really thought about that. And so in a lot of ways, I learned to like play like Alex. Like I learned to play as a better ensemble person by playing next to her. And so we ended up just like gelling really well, our sounds, and then our personalities kind of gelled. Like we enjoyed hanging out and like doing like making shenanigans with like outside of rehearsal too. And so then we were like, yeah, like let's keep playing together. So that's how we met. And then how did we decide that like Venn Duo was going to be a thing?
Okay, so I know this part, and I just wanted to stop because I think it's hilarious because I remember you saying that story to me, and I'm like, I don't remember any of that because I think, if anything, I remember, unless I'm like making this up, but did you come to visit Messiah before you even like while you were auditioning? Because I think your dad was working there 1 year prior, and you sat in wind ensemble when we were like in Palmer Hall. Like I don't know why, but that's like my first memory of you if I have to really think back. But even then, like you and I weren't talking because I don't even think you were shadowing me. I think you were with either Joanna or Eric.
Yeah, I think I was sitting in like the second row. Actually, I think it was between Zubak and Alyssa, which homie.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But yeah, I did come and visit for like one rehearsal, but I was just like that, like totally stressed little high school Hannah out to even be visiting and sitting in the ensemble. So I was just trying to like stay in my lane and be good and do my best. And so yeah, I probably didn't talk to anybody,
Yeah.
honestly.
Okay, well, I think that's funny because I guess that's our first meeting and I just don't remember it. But anyways, how did we start as a duo? So it's funny because we tell people this all the time and they're like, what? But Hannah and I have never performed together as a duo until last year at Clarinet Fest in Reno. Like that was our first time ever playing a duo together. Like we had Arts Invasion and Messiah where we like sight read a bunch of duos the day before and like just played it inside of not Palmer Hall, but the High Center, which is the music department, and outside. But we've never performed like a proper piece. They were just like learning duets with your teacher situation. So when it came to us actually planning a performance, unfortunately, the COVID time came and yeah, we got sent home. We were planning to play in studio and possibly like no, we were planning to play in, what did they
Like
call it?
our performance class.
Performance. I know, because I'm thinking like Woodwind area for ASU, but I forgot what Messiah calls it. So we wanted to play in performance class and possibly at the clarinet choir situation because we had one of those in the spring usually, but performance class was like the goal. And we were learning this piece and yeah, COVID hit. And I was like, well, I already kind of learned this. And at that time, people were starting to do like what they call multi-track, which is what Hannah and I do frequently. And I was like, I wonder if we could do this. Like, I'm listening through it, looking through it. I'm like, there's not many tempo or time changes. Like, let's just give it a shot. So Hannah and I just gave it a go. And throughout that period of the remainder of spring, but mostly in that summer, we were like, oh, we could keep doing this until we hit like Bach pieces. And we were like, oh, this is awful. Because at that time, I remember like we just could not line things up because there's this whole thing where like if you use AirPods, like it just isn't aligned with the track or the click track, meaning whoever used AirPods, that audio wouldn't line up with the other person. So we would try to like splice and speed up some stuff, but then it created like a weird sound thing. And we would post some of them and we were like, oh, we're never doing Bach again. Never ever, until we kept doing it. But after a while, I think around when I started, like around the fall semester, like when school was starting up, we were like, hey, we should just be a duo. Let's figure out a name. And that's just it. That's how it started and how we are what we are today.
Yeah, we honestly like did a lot of learning through experience and like learn like teaching ourselves. Like we would like Alex like looked up YouTube videos and on how to do like multi-tracks and then she like sent it to me. She was like, "Okay, I think it's like this and I think we do it like this." And we still are kind of like learning together like how to better do things and how to balance things and how to be the best novice audio engineers that we can because like we don't use fancy software. Like we record in GarageBand, we do our stuff in iMovie. Like we're not high tech girlies. Like we're not special sound engineers or anything, but I feel like I'm really proud of us of our growth because I feel like we can pretty consistently put out a good product using the tools and the skills that we have. And honestly, thank you, COVID, because we wouldn't have done that and we wouldn't be a duo without it. So yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a really good segue into one of our other questions that we got asked from one of my studio members, Tyler Tashton. And he says, what is your advice on keeping a chamber group going and not just ending? And that's a really good question because it's
Yeah.
taken a lot of work to keep Venn Duo going, especially at a distance. Like we don't live near each other. Alex and I see each other maybe twice a year if we're lucky. And so it's a lot of work to keep it going. But what would you say to that, Alex?
Advice to keep a chamber group going. Ooh. See, this is like, it's interesting because like you and I, like this is one of the only chamber groups that I think like long term that I'm currently involved in. And so far, so good. But I think one of the biggest things is like before committing to a long term, like I assume if you're getting into a chamber group, you're thinking this is going to be a long term thing. Prior to doing that, make sure it's with someone you get along with outside of rehearsals. I think that's important only because are you only talking to this person like business, 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 business? Because I feel like Hannah and I aren't that type. We're not those people. Like, what is it called? Exo Kitty came out yesterday, and I was in her chat. I was like, Exo Kitty is out. I repeat, Exo Kitty is out. But it's like, it's funny because Hannah's not only my like business partner, if you want to put it that way, but we're also friends and we talk about like real life things. We talk about jokes, we talk about relationships, we talk about everything. But I think when you get along with that person outside of music, it's so much easier to work with them. That being said, it also can be very challenging if you've never worked with that person in a professional setting, then it could be hairy because if you're the type of person where you're like, okay, this, and your friend has never seen that professional business side of you before, they're like, who is that? Like, I'm so used to you being a goof. Like, this is weird. But when you know this person, and that's why I say vetting is so important, like knowing who you're about to collab with, because I feel like both Hannah and I give off both of those personalities to each other. Like there's days where we're just joking, not talking about anything Venn related. And then there's other days where we're like, okay, what's the posting schedule for this month? Okay, what are we making for this month? And that's the conversation. Like that's just it. And yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things to like keep a group going is like knowing who you're working with and like being your true authentic self from the jump so that they know like, is this going to be a good match? I think something else that keeps a chamber group going is having the same goals. I think one thing that happened to me recently was someone asked me to be part of a reed quintet, I believe. I don't know if it was a reed quintet or something quintet, but their goal was to be in competitions. I know that I don't want to do competitions. I am very traumatized from competitions. And I was very real with them. I was like, I don't want to do competitions because that requires a whole new mindset. Like for me, when I think of competitions, I go back to when I did compete in competitions for almost like 4 to 5 years. I was very competitive. Like, I don't care who you are. If I don't win, I'm mad. And that's a reality of a competition. Like, you pay all this money to travel, compete, and you're with these people. What happens when you don't win? Like, are we done? So I was like, I don't really want to do that. Like, I'm open to doing that because Hannah and I have competed, like we submitted and got into like a semifinal situation, but that was just for funsies. Like we didn't travel to go to a competition. This group wanted to do that. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. That's not my end goal with music. So having like-minded goals is another thing for me. I'll probably think of something else, but what do you have to say, Hannah?
So that was going to be my biggest one was make sure that you have like-minded goals and like-minded people. I think you said both of those things really well. And kind of like what Alex was saying, like if you don't have the same goals, then you're not going to last because everybody is in the group for different reasons. So I mean, the chamber group can last even if you're not doing competitions. Like you don't have to have competitions, but I do think that a chamber group will get longevity if you can identify things that you want to do in the future and like solidify those common goals. So whether it's, oh, we would really like to play at this coffee shop that's in our town. We would really like to do an afternoon of just ambient music. Let's work towards that. Then your chamber group can be together and be unified in that goal because you have something set and you have something that you're all working towards collectively. Yeah, so I mean, I think it's a mixture of number one, picking people that are going to work well with you, not only on the music side of things, like who have the same standards and who have the same like expectations as you, but who are also going to like match your work ethic, you know, because it's always really frustrating if you're not in a group where, you know, where everybody is putting in the same amount of work.
Mhm.
So people who have the same mindset, who have the same work ethic. Number two, people who have the same, you know, desires and reasons for wanting to be in the group. And then number three, things in the future that are going to give the group a reason to stay together. Like there are only so many sight reading sessions you can do before you're like, okay, so what are we going to do about it, you know? So I would just say, like, if you're looking to keep a group together, kind of assess those things. Do we all have the same goals for the group? Do we all have the same desire to even be in the group? And if not, like, it's okay if the answer is no. Then you just need to reevaluate who's in the group and what the group is going to do. And then I would say seek out opportunities for the group because I think that's something that keeps Venn alive, honestly, as well, is like keep having performance opportunities. Because if we didn't have these opportunities where, okay, I know that Alex and I are going to be together at ICA 2023, and there we're going to record this piece, and this piece, and we're going to perform this piece, and we're going to do this. Like, those are things that go into our planning and how we spend our time and how we spend our practice. And so I think having good people, having same goals, and having actual performance events that you're working towards as a group are all things that will keep your group alive.
Yeah, and I think because if we're being honest, like I feel like when you and I started, like it was just for funsies. Like we just like playing with each other. And when we did the interview with Jonathan and Jeff, I mean, when they told their story, like it really resembles ours, like minus them performing in real life. Whereas like we just like playing with each other and we've been grateful enough to have opportunities to perform at like all these both in-person and online conferences. So for us it really did start off as fun, but like a lot of what we've said I think has to do with forming a group, and it's like how do we maintain that. And one thing that I thought about like when thinking about that as you were speaking, I was thinking about like mutual respect, and that's like of the person and of their time. And I say that because I've seen like in my schools, like a lot of groups fall apart because there's no mutual respect, because there's no open communication about true feelings. Like I remember one time, like Hannah and I have never like fallen out because of like a lack of disrespect. And we've never gotten like into an argument, but like we're also not afraid to voice our opinion. Like, for example, if we don't like I remember it was one time, it was a conference in like a woodwind conference in South Carolina or something. It was like, hey, we should do this because we already had like material we could submit. But Hannah was very quick to voice her opinion, which I appreciate. And she was like, I don't think I could do that because that's my first year at UNT. Like, I don't know what's going to be happening. Like, I need to get acclimated to school first. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, no hard feelings. But like, are you in a group where you feel like you can openly voice your opinion? Because if you're not, then that is problematic. When things don't go right, like what are you going to say? Because that ties into like what happens if you don't like the rep that y'all pick. Like, did one person pick this rep because now you're playing something that doesn't bring you joy and you're probably unhappy about the situation? Or what happens when someone gives you constructive criticism? Hannah and I, a lot of the times, like we're recording in our virtual projects, like we listen to each other. So like if I sound bad doing something, Hannah's quick to be like, hey, maybe you should try edit that timestamp because it's not coming across well. And I'm not offended because I know that there's a mutual respect, and what we're doing as a duo, as a chamber group, is all for the betterment of us together, not us as individuals. And we're looking out for each other, which I think is important too. So yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that goes back to like the beginning of like us getting to know each other and getting to play with each other. Like Alex would like say stuff like that to me, like, hey, you need to match the articulation here. And I had a choice in that moment. I could either, take that really personally, like she must think that I'm a terrible person because she felt the need to correct me in the middle of rehearsal. Or I could be like, oh, she's been around the block a few times. She knows that it needs to be this way and it's actually going to be better if I do what she says. And so yeah, I think that's a really valuable skill to have, is taking and giving constructive feedback. But I also think it's the glue that kind of holds an ensemble together, is being able to take that and but also being willing to like give it to other people in a way that is respectful and gracious and everything like that.
Yep. Yep. I agree. Let's see.
So here's a question for you. How
Oh,
do you deal with difficult colleagues? Like maybe somebody who isn't so great at giving and receiving constructive feedback, or maybe just somebody who just like seems to cause problems. Like how do you respond to like a negative person in your sphere? Because like you and I have both experienced firsthand how fun and fulfilling music making can be when you're around people, around collaborators that you're like, yes, we vibe on a personal level, we vibe on a musical level, there's good communication, there's mutual respect. Like to me, that is the most rewarding part of what we do, is getting to encounter situations like that. But there's also the flip side of it where you get stuck with people who are so difficult, who just seem like the entire opposite of everything you are and everything you stand for. But you're like, you're a musician too. Like, how do you call yourself a musician and you act this way? How do you deal with people like that?
you know, one day I'm actually going to like tell y'all stories because I've had it. Like I have been through it, okay? And like I smile, but like my mom always tells me like people would not have been able to go through what you've been through, like dealing with difficult colleagues in this field, colleagues, adults, just people. And it's so sad that it is a thing. And it's like, well, how do you deal with that? Because the reality of the situation is that you cannot voice your opinion. People are very sensitive in the music field, whether they say, I take constructive criticism. Like, no, you don't. Like, when someone corrects you, are you the type of person to turn around and talk to your friend about, did they just correct me? Like, who do they think they are? Because if you're that person, you don't know how to take constructive criticism, in my opinion. And how do I deal with that? Like, I feel like I'm really good at reading people, like, in my opinion. And I don't even mean to say that like being cocky, but I think I'm really good at reading people and knowing like what their triggers are and like knowing their sensitivity level. I try to keep everything in a respectful box when dealing with each person because every person reacts differently. Like that's just the bottom line. And when it comes to like people being weird, like in sectionals or like in rehearsals, honestly, I just remind myself like this is not a permanent situation. Like this is just a cycle. Like literally this is just a cycle in our concert series, and I don't have to deal with them for a lifetime. Like this is just a temporary situation. And in those moments, I really remember to have a filter, to be kind. This is where the Christian side comes out, where it's just like, remember to be kind. But then there's also that side of you that has to remember, like, know what is respectful from them and yourself. Like, don't take disrespect either. Like, be open and respectful in your response if you need to respond. But a lot of the times, just like sit there quietly, just observe and remember that this is not going to be permanent. Like you will not have to deal with this person for your lifetime. And I say that knowing that people are probably listening to this being like, but the music world is small. Like you're going to run into them again. Like this is a lifetime. Like, yeah, it is a lifetime, but things go both ways. Like if you think I have to deal with them for the rest of my life, they have to deal with me for the rest of their life. And they have to know that what they did to me will stick with me for the rest of my life, and I will communicate that with others. So who's actually being more hurt in this situation? The person doing wrong. So just remember not to do wrong, to be respectful, observe, and remember this is not for forever. So what about you, Hannah?
I think that's so wise, Alex. I think all of that is so wise. And yeah, I have some difficult people in my sphere that I just, it can really work me up. Like when I hear and see and experience the bad things that they say or do to me and also to people I care about. Like that's the one that really gets me is when I hear about like them doing and saying things to people that I really care about, to my friends. And it's really easy for me to get really worked up over that. Like I'm not a confrontational person, so like I'm not the type of person who would like march up to them and be like, who do you think you are doing this? But I spend a lot of time like anguishing over like, where did they get off? Like how dare they do this to another person? And so I have just had to learn to be like, you know what, this person doing all of these terrible things, saying all of these really, really ugly things, like they're not worth my mental time and energy. Like my resources of my energy, of my mental capacity, of my worrying are not worth being spent on this person. They are not worth it. And so, kind of when I can adopt that mindset of like, you're kind of being stolen from when you choose to spend your energy and your time worrying about stuff like that. Like don't let them do that to you. Like if they're gonna do what they're gonna do regardless. And so you just have to be able to be like, you know what, they're not worth my time, they're not worth my mental energy, and they're not if they're causing you that much anguish. The other thing is like, you know, I say that I'm not a confrontational person, but I think that we all like can slip into this place where you're like, well, if I got the chance to go up to them, like, what would I say? What would I say to them if I had the chance? And in that moment, I'm going to say it. I'm going to win the argument with that zinger and I'm going to let them know. But you're never going to get that opportunity, number one, even though we would all love it. I know. But the other thing is like if the person that is causing you and your people this much anguish, you're not going to be the one to change them. It's not going to be one person that is going to change them. Like they're going to get broken somehow, some way, but it's you yourself can never be the straw that breaks the camel's back, and I firmly believe that. And so you just have to choose to not let them occupy your mental capacity and choose to be kind, like Alex said, because people who are stirring up problems in the lives of other people just to stir things up, just to be that person, they're hurt. Like hurt people. Something has happened to them in their life, whether it be in the sphere of music, whether it be in their personal life, that has made them this way. And so they're going to do what they're going to do, and there's nothing really that you can do about it. So honestly, like Alex was saying, I have found that the best thing you can do is be kind to them, because that really bothers them whenever you are kind back to them. It really just like rubs them the wrong way, because they know that they're saying all this nasty stuff about you and your friends. You know that they're saying all this stuff about you and your friends, but you're choosing to treat them in a nice way anyway. And that's really confusing to them, and that bothers them a lot. So I have experienced it firsthand where I am nice to the people I know talk bad about me and my friends, and they're at least nice to my face. I mean, they still say stuff behind my back, but we can at least operate on a cordial level professionally. And also, like Alex was saying, when you're in school, no matter what level you're at, your network are your classmates. So if you are walking around destroying your classmates, you're just shooting yourself in the foot professionally. You're not getting ahead by tearing other people down. In fact, you're just like Xing out references for future jobs. Like if somebody calls me and says, hey, should I like give so and so this position? I'm thinking of calling him. I will say, call anybody else. Literally call anybody else. Actually, call Alex Shea. That's who you should call. But but yeah, that's kind of my 3 cents on that.
No, and I think you made very valid points, and something you said, like for me, my mom would always tell me like, one, pick your battles because not everyone's worth it, not everything is worth it. And two, like the whole like smiling thing, like it is so funny how mad people get to see not even if you're being nice to them, but seeing how happy you are even when they're trying their hardest to like destroy your morality. And it's just insane. And it's not saying like smile in a fake way, like smile even when you don't want to situation, but like, does one person steal your happiness that much where it's worth you being a grumpy old troll to everybody else? And I just don't think it's worth it because, yes, unfortunately, there's a lot of people in the music community that like try to stir things up, like talking about you behind your back situation, but smiling in your face. And honestly, I'm very big on breaking stigmas. And when it comes to situations like that, like I don't respect people who can vocalize how they truly feel to my face, meaning whatever you said means nothing to me because you're not brave enough to say that to my face. Like I would respect you so much more if you were to say it to my face, even if you were being disrespectful. But the fact that you're not brave enough to vocalize what you've said behind my back to me means you're a weenie. That's it.
I think that's so powerful. I never thought of it like that. It
It's
must not really be true if you're not willing to say it to my face.
exactly because it's something that they can so easily say to somebody else and to several others. But why haven't they said it to you? It's because they're afraid. It's because they're not brave enough to really tell you how you feel about them because they know you are the type of person, although you are so kind, like Hannah, like I could just imagine getting roasted by Hannah because she would not like to me, she's not the person to like yell at you. Like she would just be there and be like, well, I think you were rude and I think we need to set boundaries. So like this just isn't gonna happen. Have a good life. Like she would be so calm with it that the person would be shook. Like they would be like they're expecting this big explosion, but it's like the people who spend so much time like talking to others about you, like they're just not brave enough. So don't worry about it. And that being said, like if people are spreading rumors about you, because it's been done to me, it looks like it's been done to Hannah as well. I honestly don't find the worth in trying to justify the truth behind it because if people, and that's the thing, like when it comes to music, communities are there. Like whether or not we admit it, like musicians have communities, even though they aren't great, in my opinion. Like there's people that get along with others like solely from talking about people. Like that is your unifying point, and that is so unfortunate. But like if those people around that person are giving validity and believing the rumors being said about you, they're just as bad as well. And when it comes to you, when people approach you asking like, is that true? Like, did you hear what so and so said? Do you need to defend yourself? You know who you are. The people who know and love you know who you are. So don't spend the time trying to justify yourself being like, I am so nice. I did this. If you know me and if you've ever seen me, like when it comes to someone telling me something that someone said I did, I am the type of person to be like, tell me more since you know more about me than I know about myself and the conversations that I've had with apparently someone. And it's just like, just humor me because it's like the fact that people can run wild with situations, it's like you found your answer clearly because you've believed it and you took X amount of time to come to me before asking for the truth, my side of the story. So don't waste your time. Like I said, these people, they are in your life in the long run as musicians within this community, but they're only in your life for this season and this part of your journey. Like they only matter right now, not then. So that's my 2 cents.
Girl.
Okay. Oh, so I have a question, a more light question. I want to know, Hannah's um like your music story. Like when did you start music and when did you know the clarinet was the one?
So that's a really good question. I grew up in a musical home. So both of my parents are music teachers. And I am the oldest of four kids, and all of the kids are musicians. So I think growing up where I just kind of like grew up where music was just part of our lifestyle. Like my mom taught me piano until I was like 16. Like it was just like a norm that, when we come home from school, we practice. And whenever we would like play pretend with our dolls and stuff, like our dolls would always sing, and like it was like a musical. Like I just kind of grew up with music always around me. So it was a big part of my life. And I'm honestly really grateful for that because I don't know, I feel like it gave me a really whimsical, very joyful approach to like being a person. And I appreciate that a lot. But I actually really wanted to be a singer. So I'm at home right now in the great state of Pennsylvania, and I'm in like my childhood bedroom, and up on my wall are still all of my Broadway posters. So I really believed that I was going to be on Broadway, that I was going to be a singer. And then I started taking voice lessons, and I quickly found out that I was not going to be a singer because I was so bad. So bad. Like I can like carry a tune, but like my voice teacher was like, lift your palate. And I was like, I don't have one. Like I don't know what you're talking. I just couldn't do it. And so singing was not it. And so then in fourth grade, it was time for us to pick an instrument, right? That's when, in Pennsylvania, kids start playing instruments is fourth grade. And I knew that we had a clarinet at my house. And so after we went home, after pick the instrument day, like our teacher had demonstrated all of them and was like, be thinking about what you want to play. And so I found the clarinet in like one of our old closets, and I opened it up, and I was like, I bet you I could put this together. It doesn't look that hard. So I did. Somehow, I know every clarinetist is like, what about the bridge key? Somehow it was fine. I don't even know. The Lord guided me, I guess. And then there was a reed inside of it, inside of the case. This is the worst part of the story. And I was like, I bet you I can play this thing. So I put the reed on the instrument. I don't even want to know. I'm surprised I didn't die that day. And I figured out how to play Mary Had a Little Lamb on the clarinet. Bum, 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 bum. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna play the clarinet. And that was kind of it. I started taking clarinet lessons. I didn't start taking formal lessons until like my sophomore year of high school, but I kind of have been playing the clarinet rather seriously ever since. And so that's kind of how I came to music and how I came to clarinet playing. Yeah, it's just always been part of my life. And even now, like I just got out of school, or UNT just ended for the year, and I kind of like took like a week-long break from my instrument just to like detox and relax a little bit before I got back into it. But I was like feeling really antsy the other day, and I like couldn't pinpoint why. Like I had like, done my laundry, gone to the gym, done all of these like normal person things. And I'm like, I'm still just like so antsy. Like I feel like I need to do something. And I was like, oh, I haven't played my clarinet today. And so I got on my clarinet and I just like did some fundamentals while I watched Netflix, and I was like, I instantly felt better. And so it's just part of my life. I wouldn't have it any other way. Music is just like something that I need to do and that I love to do. So
And so
yeah.
I have a follow-up question because I feel like for Americans, like they may not experience this a lot, but for a lot of international people, whether it's music, whether it's dance, theater, anything, like there's a lot of pushback studying in the arts. But you coming from a musical family, I'm assuming there was no pushback because that is seen as like a career that could help you and a family.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, my parents were always super supportive and I don't want to say adamant because they never forced us to, but like they were always very, insistent that we, you know, make music an important part of our lives. And, that was always really, really supported in my house. I will say that my school district that I grew up in was not super strong in the arts. So a lot of my classmates, like I was the only person out of my class who like pursued music after college that I know of. And so like the arts were not super well supported in my community. And so I feel really grateful that I have music teacher parents who were like, yeah, you need to do this, like keep doing this. So
That's cool. That's
what about
neat.
your story? I know that you have a kind of a winding road to the clarinet as well. Why don't you share with the people? Because I don't know if very many people know what you played before you played the clarinet.
So I started music at a young age. I started like when I was around 4, 5. So when I started, my mom's Asian. So I always tell people like I'm a stereotypical baby. I started with piano and violin at the same time. Like it was a double hitter. And I really liked violin more than piano. And it's so interesting because I remember one time someone asked me like, do you remember like learning how to read music? And I honestly don't. Like I don't remember learning how to read music. I don't remember like struggling learning how to learn the piano or violin. Like it's weird for me. My mom always told me like for me learning instruments just is very natural for me and it just makes sense. Like when you read, I just read and that's just music for me. So, with that being said, in the Bahamas and in a lot of other countries outside of the States, we do the ABRSM exams, or for others, the Trinity College music exam. So, I was doing Trinity College piano exams. I was also doing ABRSM violin exams until I was like, I'm bored of this because I was doing the violin, but my sister was doing the violin as well. And I think I just didn't want to do the same thing as her. There was a strong growing violin strings community with the help of a lady that eventually became my clarinet teacher. Um, and I just got bored. And then one day it was like, I don't think it was fourth grade because I switched schools at that point. But it was a little bit earlier than that, maybe third grade, maybe even second, honestly. But a guy who later became my orchestra conductor was teaching band at my then school. And I brought my violin. I didn't know. I just brought my violin because that's what I played. That's what I had. So he was like, that's not a band instrument. You'll have to pick one. So I don't know where this flute came from, like if my mom brought me one, but I played the flute for like less than an hour. And I was like, I'm not doing it. Like, no, girl, this is hard. Like, I feel like I'm a pass out not doing it. And so I ended up back at my music school because the way music works in the Bahamas is that you don't really have like a music program. Like you learn music theory in music. You don't really play an instrument. When you play an instrument, it's the recorder. So with that, I went to my music school because that's where you do lessons after school, like twice or three times a week. But I went there and I just saw like this case sitting in the front, like waiting area where parents sit. Like it was just a case on a table. And I was like, what's that? And they opened it. They were like, it's a clarinet. I'm like, Mommy, can I play that? And she was like, and so we got it. Like my mom's great. She just got me that clarinet right there, right then. And it's funny because I tell my mommy this all the time. Like she paid for me to have music lessons, but I really taught myself. Like I don't know what it was in my brain that like I just could teach myself instruments. Like that's just my special talent, I would call it. But yeah, so I got sent into the room where I had a teacher, but really there was a music stand, a chair, some other kids. But I just sat in front of that book and read the whole book and taught myself the clarinet right there and then. So that's how I started the clarinet. Long story to get there, but very important. But with that being said, I think it's important to mention that, and I have a really long story on how I figured out like the clarinet was like the one, but it's funny because I was very well versed in the art. So my mom's a single parent. So she doesn't have a maid. And the way we were kept busy while she had to work her 9 to 5 after my school finishes at like 3 was signing us up for extracurriculars. So I was in ballet while doing music from like age 4 and 5. So I was in dance this whole time while doing music. So 5 days a week, I had something to do. And dance was 3 days a week. And that's important because when I eventually got to an age where I was still doing dance like 3 days a week, this was up until like ninth grade. I was doing like a 7 day a week type of music and dance situation. No, Sundays were kind of free sometimes, but mostly not. But I was busy and I like learning instruments. So in that time, I picked up the cello and the double bass. And I really liked the cello. Like I would have, if I didn't study the clarinet, I tell everybody it would have been the cello. Like I just loved it. And I also taught myself those things and then had lessons, but it was just me teaching myself again and like performing in their concerts. It came to a point where my mom and my then I had two clarinet teachers actually, one main one, but two. And she was like, you need to pick an instrument. if you want to study music, like you only could do one. Like you need to focus on one at this point. I'm in like ninth grade now. And she was a foreigner. She was from England and she had studied music. So she knows like what it takes to get into college. And in the Bahamas, that's not a thing. Like people don't know what it takes to become a music major, performance music major, not an ad major. They're two different things because you have to audition for both, but you need more qualifications to be a performance major. So then I just picked the clarinet. But with that being said, I stopped dance right there and then. And dance was 3 days a week. Music was like 2/3 days a week because I also did it on Saturday. So Thursday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturdays. And then I totally switched. And now I'm basically in music like 6 days a week. But then I switched to one main teacher. And then I was only like 2 times a week, but like an intense, like basically an applied lesson, like an hour lesson type of situation with her. So yeah, that's how I figured out music. But then in terms of like studying music, that's why I asked you like if you had any pushback, because for me I did. Like I come from a, like it's so funny, like there's so many reels and videos and memes on social media where parents, well, children are responding and joking, being like, our Asian parents like wanted us to be in music. They wanted us to do this, but when it came time to like pick a degree and a career, if you said music, they were like, no, like no, that was only for funsies. You're not allowed to do it. And it's a real situation. Like for me, my mom, I remember I was like, she asked me one day, like driving home, because she always picked me up to like take me home. That's one thing she always did. But she was like, so what do you want to study? I think I was in like 11th grade. She was like, what do you want to study? Like at this point, I already knew I wanted to study music because that's the only thing I really liked, honestly speaking. And I was like, music. She was like, how are you going to make a career out of that? Like, tell me your plan right now. Like, tell me how you're going to make it work. And I like, I don't know what came out of my mouth, but I guess it made sense because she was like, okay. And she was just like, because she's in business and my family's very traditional when it comes to like fields and careers. She was like, at least take some business classes to see if you like it. And I went to Messiah, was only a music major, ended up listening to her my like second semester. And I was like, oh, I do like business. And then I declared my double major. And then she was very happy because now I have business to, as a safety net and music. And that's a very common thing, especially if you're from like an Asian household or like an international household. Like they will make you have 2 degrees only because they really believe, and it is true to a certain extent, that you need some type of security, because if you're from a country where music is not traditionally very like fulfilling financially, feel like you need some other sort of financial support, which will be the business degree for my situation. So yeah, that's my long story.
I did not know that you played the double bass until one of our recordings, and I saw it in the background, and I was like, Alex, why is there a double bass in the background? You were like, oh, that's mine. I used to play it. And I was like, shut up. Like, that's
It,
so
it
crazy.
was funny because in freshman year of Messiah, I was in orchestra, but for double bass because I didn't make it for clarinet because at that time it was like Eric and I think Tim Pulio because they were the top. So I couldn't be in orchestra and I was doing applied double bass lessons. And he was like, I'm going to talk to Dixon to see if I could just let you be in orchestra. And I was like, okay, cool. So I was in orchestra for double bass.
That's so awesome. I love that.
So yeah, let's see. But yeah, I had one more question, but I don't know. I don't know how long we've been recording because I don't want it to be too long of a podcast. We could always do a part two. But what
I
do
was
you
gonna say
think?
we're just about at an hour, but I have one more question to close us out.
Okay, you go ahead then. You be the closer.
Of the Bridgerton series in existence, season one, season two, or Queen Charlotte, what's your favorite?
Charlotte, no
Oh,
question.
me too. It's so good.
It is so good. Oh my goodness. Like if y'all haven't watched it and if y'all don't know me, like I cry for every film. Like if I don't cry, it was not good. Like that is just the period point blank. But I was bawling the whole day. Like usually I watch Netflix while practicing or even doing fundamentals, but I could not because I couldn't stop crying. I just had to put my clarinet down. I was like, showtime.
I couldn't stop crying either. It was so good. So good. And I'm not a crier, and I was crying.
Oh, it was so good. But anyways, I think this was a really good Q&A. I think we should definitely do a part 2 because you guys had some really good questions for us. But I guess I'll close it out since Hannah started it all. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you tune in for more and stay tuned because 2 exciting things. 1, we're playing at Clarinet Fest, so be there or be square. And 2, Venn officially has a recital and it'll be in Nassau, Bahamas. So if you're one of the fellow Bahamians watching, please come out and support. It's going to be hosted by the National Music Society. So we're very, very excited to be part of all that. But thank you guys so much for watching this episode with the Venn Pod, and we'll see y'all later.